Our next reader is predominantly a writer of plays and essays. He earned an MFA in writing at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where he teaches creativity in the Continuing Studies program. He's a recipient of the Václav Havel Fellowship in Playwriting from Western Michigan University and a Ragdale Foundation residency in writing. He co-founded the collaborative theater group Attention Deficit Drama and currently performs with Every House Has a Door. He also founded the Chicago Writers House and the Chicago Book Expo and is currently the director of the Guild Literary Complex. Please welcome to our microphone, Mr. John Rich.
Hello, everyone. That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Andrew. I will be reading an excerpt from my novel "Waking Up in Albany," which takes place primarily in Michigan, a little bit in Albany. The part that I'll be reading from tonight is from Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and I should speak very briefly about the structure of the book. It might help a little bit. There are three primary characters. The central character goes by the letter M. He's an anonymous person. He's a 20-something-year-old atheist who believes he is becoming Jesus Christ. So there's a problem for him. He hires a 30-something marginally employed writer, substitute teacher named Carl, and Carl will be addressing you in this excerpt tonight. And then there is also Leslie, the woman they both love. So Carl is trying to write this biography about this young kid. He doesn't necessarily believe the young kid, and he then falls in love with Leslie and decides, I'm going to debunk this kid, go to where he says he's from, and prove him wrong so I can sleep with Leslie. M will only be mentioned, I think, once in this excerpt, and there's a mention of a stain on Carl's shirt. He's not very good at what he does. He earlier in the morning, he threw up in the archives of a library where M's mother works, and he almost gives up the chase, but he continues on. The Adventure Motel. One more thing. This takes place in Mass City in Ontonagon County, far west of the UP, so Carl's actually driven maybe 6 or 8 hours in the snow to get to this place. The Adventure Motel is an 8-unit L-shaped building. When I arrived, the parking lot was full of trucks and trailers, but no people. The whir of snowmobiles was all around, though, mixed with tiny barks emanating from the motel office. The terrier quieted when I entered, made a quick sniff of my jeans, then started to turn circles and bellow. An elderly woman came out from a back room. Ah, so you did have something to be excited about. She walked carefully, off balance, supporting her weight on the counter, a glass case full of candy bars and camouflage keepsakes. I was happy to learn they had a room, though the circumstances were grim. A snowmobiler had hit a tree and broke his neck. They've been so anxious waiting for snow, the woman said. This poor fellow from Green Bay went out drunk and, well, he probably shouldn't have, but nobody need tell him now. I was given the dead man's room. It was small and dark, completely covered by thin wood paneling. There were 2 beds, one in the middle of the room and another crammed into a corner, an easy chair and a desk with a TV on top. The beds were made and the trash emptied, but the carpet was lousy with dirt and the air smelled of ash and beer. I felt sick. I couldn't keep a good feeling in my bones for more than 30 minutes. A dead man's room. I stepped back outside. Underneath the smell of diesel, the night breeze was crisp. I wanted to get just a little further away, find that something familiar to hook my hat on. I walked along the highway. At Adventure Avenue, a street sign said I was simultaneously on M26 and 13th Street. Marking the same 4 corners was a hardware store called Chance's, a bar called Tig's, its adjacent lot half full with trucks and sleds, a town hall, and a service station revamped as an art store. A coincidence that the number was 1352? If M was to be believed, he was born in the back of that old station. I tried to look into the windows. They were dirty, cluttered. I tried the door, locked, but a flyer, taped on the inside, caught my attention. The Adventure Artisans were doing a play, their annual holiday production of the 39 Steps. It said the play was based on a Hitchcock film. Never heard of it. I took out my pad and made a few notes. I heard the sound of boots in the snow behind me. "You lost, mister?" a man said. I turned to see two men. The bearded one looked at me over his hands as he lit a cigarette, cowboy-like. The tall one, his arms folded across his chest and inside a pair of cold-weather overalls, stood motionless. Their trail of footprints came from Tiggs. "I just pulled into town," I said, "getting the lay of the land." "Most people," the beard said, blowing smoke, "they wait till daylight and go up to the bluff for that." "The bluff?" He pointed over his shoulder with a fat thumb, and above the buildings along Adventure I could see a gray and white ridge. It was too dark to see more. "What were you writing?" "The opening hours," I said. His large hands made me nervous. He kept using them to comb his beard or gesture, a thread of smoke continuously rising from his cigarette. "Doing your holiday shopping en masse, eh? Is there a problem here?" "No, not at all. In fact, I'm glad to hear it. I know the woman who runs the shop. She's a nice gal, deserves your business. But sometimes bad things happen to nice people." He was playing the tough local act a touch too thick. I was tired, wanted to drink, but I listened, standing there in the cold with my hands deep in my pockets. Apparently the place had been robbed. I was sorry to hear the owner had trouble. "There a lot of theft around here?" I asked. "No, there ain't. Hardly anything for the women to gossip about at all, usually. Then the robbery. Then you standing there in the snow with your tennis shoes and no hat." Like I said, I'm just looking around. Beard mumbled. He took a drag on his cigarette and flicked away the butt. "Just don't let me find you putting your nose where it don't belong, eh?" The line was drawn, and I knew my part. "I'm going to go now," I said. "Good luck finding the thieves." I drifted up towards the other bar in town, the Buckhorn. After a few yards, I turned to see the men exactly where I had left them. Beard tapped the brim of his orange cap as a final salute, as if to say he had my number, and both men spun around and crossed back to Tiggs. The Buckhorn had seemed like the less popular establishment until I got closer. Music and laughter rumbled through the fogged-up windows. Around the corner, trucks were squeezed into a wedge near the entrance, and 10 sleds were parked on the bank of plowed snow. Another 10 or so machines were parked across the street by a baseball field, and a few more were arriving from a line of trees behind the first base line. Though faceless and covered in gear, I had the sense of the riders' happiness. They rode standing upright on their sleds, sometimes raising an arm or turning fast, tight circles in the middle of the snow-covered field, or giving the machine a punch of gas just before popping out of a ditch, their compatriots clapping. Inside, I expected classic rock or country music. Instead, something more electric rolled out of the jukebox. At the entrance, a bench and a rack for helmets with jackets and a pool of melted snow. Beyond that, the bar was a wide room with a few posts to support the building's second floor. Like my motel, the interior was dark and plenty dingy, but thanks to a wood fire and promise of whiskey, I felt okay. I shook the cold out of my shoulders and wound my way to a single open seat next to the pellet stove, which blew hot air directly into my corner. I sat there, sweating like a fool, but there was nowhere else to go. It was a mixed crowd, locals and others here for the snow, and I collected sideways glances from all of them. I wanted to keep my jacket on. A stain remained visible on my shirt, but the heat was unbearable. I sat so I didn't have to see anybody, and held my arms tight against my body to keep the stink contained. The only staff was an elderly woman with a slow gait. She hobbled all the way from one end of the long L bar to the other, my side, taking orders along the way and being chatty. Were all the women in this town lame, leaning on counters, running the show? There was a dog here, too, a chocolate lab, maybe 5 years old, but it showed no interest in me. The modern sounds from the jukebox ended. A Tom Petty song played, and then a bluegrass tune. The old woman arrived at my end of the bar. "Hiya, hun, what are you having?" "A 7 and 7? Seagrams?" she asked. "And 7-Up. "We don't have 7-Up." "I'll take it with ginger ale then, make it a double." The soda was flat and had a slight mold taste, probably from the lime. But I wasn't about to complain. I didn't want to wait for her to make another. I paid, the old woman waddled away, and then she returned and sat down on a stool she kept behind the bar. The heat helps my arthritis, but you must be baking. I'm all right. The dog was behind the bar now, and she scratched its head. A man down the way called out to her, "Bonnie, how about a beer?" "Ray, can't you see I'm having a sit?" she hollered back. "And if you take one step behind the bar, I'll charge you double through the new year." Bonnie grabbed a green case with a clasp and pulled out a cigarette. "He should know better," she said to me. "I'm only going to be on my feet for so long, and then I sit down. On a busy night like this, you can set your watch by it. Doc recommended hip surgery, but I said I'd wait until spring." "Don't you have any help?" "My husband, he's the woolly face on the other side of the pool table there. I told him I wanted to buy this bar, and we bought it, and he lets me tend it. That's how I prefer things. He just gets in the way." A rhythm to the night developed. I'd empty my drink, and Bonnie would get me another, and then make a trip up and down the bar, filling up everyone else before resting again. It made for a slow night, but I was able to get good tipsy because I hadn't eaten and was sweating away my water reserves. Bonnie asked me what brought me to town, and I said I was doing research. A friend had a family myth, that's how I spun it, that he was born in the corner garage back when it was still a garage. I spoke in generalities. He was born in April, I said. It was in the early 70s. "That could happen, winters as they are," she said. "You should talk to Earl at the Rockland Historical Society. He'll know. That was before my time in these parts." "You're not from here?" "Nope. Bought this place as a retirement project." I returned to the subject of the garage, asked about the break-in. "Yeah, there's been a spell of bad things," Bonnie said. "Folks are edgy like I haven't seen before. I can't say why, but it runs deep." "What was stolen?" "Only one thing of value. A prop from the community theater Nancy runs." "A prop can't be that valuable." "But this one's special. It's a coat. Used to belong to an old-timer, a Finn by the name of Bjorklund. He could see the future, they say. Anyway, his coat's a prop in the annual Christmas show. The 39 Steps." "Yeah, that's the one. The hero wears the jacket to escape capture." "You've seen it?" "Every year. It's a fine show, good for a laugh, but strange for the holidays. Don't know how the tradition started, but it carries special meaning for folks here. They've been doing the show for ages." The play was based on the Hitchcock movie, but the movie was based on a book. She had a few ragged copies underneath the bar and loaned one to me. The locals, the one with roots anyway, they like to have the story around, she said. They flip through it and go over favorite passages or read it aloud over drinks and darts. It's a spy thriller that takes place in Scotland with a hero from Canada, and there's not a single reference to Michigan, Finns, mining, or anything else that would make it relevant to the community. "But they love it," she said. "I stopped trying to understand a long time ago. They taught it in Mass up until the school closed in 84 or 85. That's where my copies come from. Ontonagon doesn't have it in their curriculum, so township families read it to their kids at home." "Do you think it has anything to do with the number 13? I asked. Bonnie did not reply. She looked over my shoulder. "Sheriff, what brings you all the way out here? You ain't working, are you?" A man with a broom for a mustache was standing behind me. He held his hat in his hands. On his leather jacket, a shiny star. "Had a report somebody was snooping around Nancy's. Thought I'd ask the gentleman some questions." Next thing I knew, I was in the back of a squad car talking to the sheriff through the rearview mirror. "You look like a guy who could use a good wool coat," he said, taking a drink from a flask. "Have you seen one lately?" "Thank you."